Hey everyone, welcome to the Roundtable with Vienna Whyte, Season 1, Episode 56. I'm your host, Millie Rouge from the band Vienna Whyte here in Edmonton, Canada. This Roundtable is a YEG music production. I'd like to introduce you first to our co-host for today, which is Marissa Kay, who makes up the other half of our band Vienna Whyte. How are you doing today, Marissa?
I'm doing good. I'm on my third cup of coffee today, so I'm chilling.
You're doing great then.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll introduce you to our guest for today, Nick Ryan from Asbury Park, New Jersey. How is your day going, Nick?
How you
Welcome.
doing?
Good.
On coffee number 2.
I love it. We're all jacked on coffee. That's amazing. I have to ask, Nick, because I noticed you don't have an accent. You don't have the New Jersey accent.
Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that anyone from Jersey had an accent ever. Because down in Asbury Park, everyone kind of sounds like me, I guess.
Yeah, the same.
But I keep saying coffee. I think
So
that
you
might
do
be
have
the
a little bit.
it's the only thing that Staten Island, Jersey
say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Do you have any what do you call it, like impressions of Canadians? Is there anything you've heard about Canadians, about our accents?
just but I haven't heard that.
Okay, you will hear it. You'll absolutely hear it.
It's funny because I used to say "a" just like ironically. I'd be like, "Yeah, what's going on, eh?" And then for the longest time, I actually started to say it unironically, and I caught myself doing it for the longest time. But apparently, you can hear that we have an Albertan accent. I've been told that we are the Texas of Canada, and we have like a very specific Albertan accent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find sometimes too, I think where this comes from, honestly, I don't think it's us actually saying "a," but a lot of the times we say things like this. So we'll say, do you want to go grab those groceries from the car? Hey? And it sounds like "a," but we're actually just saying "hey," as in like question mark, like, can you do that? Yes. And it's so funny though, because it just comes out and then you don't realize it and you're like, oh, damn it.
It's like, you're coming out to the bar, hey? But then it turns into, you're coming out to the bar, eh? Like, yeah.
Yeah, so I totally see it. I totally see it.
Just going out for a rip there, buddy. Just yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you guys so much for being on the show today. I want to quickly chat with Nick here because I want to hear more about your musical journey because Marissa and I have never met you before. So I kind of want to hear.
It's great to officially meet you guys rather than just on Instagram.
Oh yeah,
awesome.
It's totally different.
Love the power of Zoom.
I know, and the internet, right? It's amazing.
Oh, yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I mean, I've been doing this all my life. I begged my parents for music lessons when I was 5 years old. So, it's been just pretty much all I've ever done, all I've ever known. I'm, mostly a singer-songwriter. I started writing at the age of 8. And it's been probably the only way I've been able to express how I feel ever since. And I'm a guitar player as well. And I play with a lot of acts in Asbury Park and New York City as well. And just keep trucking and just making as much music as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so great to hear.
It's a blessing. It's definitely a blessing.
It honestly is a blessing to be doing music as like an actual somewhat career because it's so difficult, as I'm sure you're so very familiar with. Marissa and I have been doing it for a few years now, but long time.
Yeah. And even just the teaching part too. I mean, with the whole coronavirus thing and doing all our lessons on Zoom kind of stinks right now. Marissa, are you teaching on Zoom at the moment?
Yeah, well, I'm actually teaching through Skype, which is not fun. But I have a couple lessons through Zoom just because of Skype doesn't work for a couple students because I teach through a music studio. So the software that we use to like take attendance and stuff is like paired or partnered with Skype. So that's why we're using Skype. Yeah, but no, it's been okay so far. I mean, like, at the beginning, most of my students stayed, and then once the week started getting on, some people left because they got laid off and they couldn't afford lessons, or they just like weren't into the private lessons. So I have a very small student base at the moment, but Yeah, but you know, it's fine. I find piano lessons are okay over Skype, but I find voice lessons are really hard just because with audio
Yeah.
it's hard to hear
Mm.
what they're doing, and like if they're doing it properly, you can't see, you can't touch them,
Yeah.
like, this is what you need to feel like right here.
I can't even see the diaphragm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, like you can tell them to like stand a certain way, being like, okay, this is gonna be really weird, but can you point the camera at your stomach so I can see your breathing? They're just like,
Okay.
what? You're like, I swear, I'm just trying to help. But
That's
yeah,
too
it's
Yeah.
weird.
But I mean, luckily we're about to start doing outdoor lessons like 10 feet away from each other. So
Oh, very
Interesting.
interesting. Yeah.
so
That's great.
excited, but at the same time, let's see how it works.
Yeah, see how it
Yeah,
goes.
exactly. Well, because right now singing is a very like high risk activity is what they say.
Oh,
So
really?
because they say Dr. Hinshaw in Canada, she's the
She's our messiah.
I don't know how to describe the consult, I guess.
She's the health administrator or something
I
like
think
that.
something like
Anyways.
that. Yeah. Anyway, everyone knows who Dr. Hinshaw is, but she gives us updates on everything. And she was talking about we were actually talking about it this weekend while we were camping. We were talking about how when you breathe, you express like a couple of particles, like spit particles, and then when you talk, it's like 10 or whatever. And then when you sing, it's like 100, and it's like projecting. It's just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not doing it, which is why they say singing is like a no right now.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow. I did not know. I did not know that at all.
I didn't really think that was a real thing until I thought about it, and I was like, well, we're putting a lot of pressure, like a lot of air pressure into when we sing and we project, and so it makes sense to me. But
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
The more you know. So I want to jump into our topic of the day. Thank you for sharing your musical journey, Nick. It's great to kind of hear more about what you do. So our topic for today is how our voices grow. Now, this is perfect because I unintentionally have two music teachers that are on our Zoom call today. And I didn't plan that on purpose, I promise. But I want to talk about it because I think as a musician or even just as someone who enjoys playing music, you never really see the growth and the transition between your beginner stage to your intermediate to your advanced. And I think there's a lot that kind of goes down that people don't really think about that's important. So my first question I have for the both of you, and whoever wants to start off, just jump in. Don't wait, just go ahead. What were some challenges you faced when you first started singing? What were some of the things that were the most difficult for you when you first started?
I mean, I wasn't naturally a singer because I started my lessons when I was 4 or 5, and I couldn't hold pitch. And I think between that and breathing, that was my hardest thing. But the more I listened, helped that. But like,
was it just
now,
like other artists you listened to, like different people?
Because like coming from Asbury Park, New Jersey, I mean, obviously my biggest idol is Mr. Springsteen himself.
Hey.
But like, and I think I don't think, I know as a kid, I wanted to be Bruce Springsteen. I didn't want to
awesome.
be Nick Ryan. Some days I think that I wake up and I'm like, what am I gonna do today? But it's once I started listening, who changed my whole perspective on singing was Chris Stapleton.
Oh,
With,
that's so interesting.
And I was like, that's a brandy. That whole run just completely
can you just like do that again? That was amazing.
It's recorded. We're just gonna listen back to that on loop.
Reverse.
But anyways, yeah, you were saying.
But just to hear someone sing with that grit, but that emotion, that power, and that technical, like, wow, some of those notes I didn't even know existed. I remember the first time I heard Tennessee Whiskey, it was when YouTube first did that slowdown thing where you could bring it down. Like, I had to listen to it like for 3 days straight to figure out how he did that.
Yeah, the playback speed. Yeah.
But I think that was what switched my head into being more of a singer than a storyteller.
Right.
Cool. And teaching helped too. I mean, I've been teaching for the last 5 years with Jody Joseph Bongiovi, who's actually, I mean, she just happens to be John's cousin, but she's my second mom.
Nice.
She was my vocal teacher when I was 5, and I've been with her ever
Incredible.
since. She yells at me more than my mom does. And but ever since I started teaching with her, I started really listening to what I was saying to these kids.
Right.
I'm like, wow, use your diaphragm. Well, I don't use my diaphragm when I sing. And I'm like, wait, I gotta practice what I preach here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that's the thing with teaching is like it forces you to work on your own technique when you're like, hey,
Yes.
your vowels aren't being formed very properly. Everything's kind of in the back of your throat. Then you're like, wait a second.
I do
That's
that.
also me. And it forces you to really make sure that you're on top of your stuff when you're working on that. But yeah, I totally agree with what you were saying, Nick, about like listening and trying to emulate certain people. Because I didn't take voice lessons. I didn't start voice lessons until I was like 15, I think. And that was just because I was in like a musical 1-act play in high school. And I was like, I should take voice lessons. But like, yeah, it was all those things that I didn't even realize were a thing. I was like, what do you mean I have to use my stomach to sing? What does that even mean? And I was like, how do I sing higher? I can't sing high. I don't know how to do that. And yeah, it was a lot of that stuff of just like trying to emulate certain people. Like I was telling Millie, like, I don't know, when we were doing the watch party with Mariah, I was talking about how the way that I tried to sound was trying to emulate singers like Lea Salonga and Jodie Benson, like the voice of Jasmine and Ariel. I was like really wanting to sound like them. But yeah, I 100% agree. It's like you have to really think about all these things and you don't realize that you need to think about them until you have to teach it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say, Marissa, was your challenges when you first started? What was like the main thing you struggled with maybe?
For me, it was understanding the different voices. So like head voice, chest voice, mixed voice. That was the hardest thing for me because I started my voice lessons in a very classical style. So I just kind of knew the head voice and singing everything up here and like lifting the palate. Like that's how I thought you're supposed to sing high. I had no idea that you could like belt and bring your chest voice up. I just thought special people could do that. Like they had a certain thing about them that they could just do it and I couldn't. I didn't realize it was a thing you can practice.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
yeah, the biggest thing for me, like I probably shouldn't say this, but there's videos of me on YouTube when I was in a high school musical called Zombie Prom. And there was one line in one song that I had to sing way up high. It was like, it was like way up there. And I had no idea how to belt it. So I just went up in my head voice and it was like everything that I was singing down low sounded great. And then as soon as I went up there, I was like, to the nuclear plant. And it was so bad. And I was so angry because I was like, I don't know how to sing loud up here. And for the longest time, I couldn't. I've only just to break into singing into my chest voice in the last like couple of years. So that was the biggest struggle for me. And it's still a struggle nowadays. That and agility. Agility is also really hard for me. My voice is like molasses sometimes.
Yeah, I feel that. I 100% agree. Yeah. How do you find that for you, Nick? Do you find belting, was that kind of a struggle for you to learn?
I think it's all I knew how to do.
Okay.
I'm jealous.
Everyone I listened to was like just projecting. I had to learn how to, what's the word for it? I wanted to say dynamify, but that's not a word. I had to make my voice more, I had to think of my voice more dynamically.
Yeah.
That was English. There we go.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
That's why I need that third cup of coffee. But like even now, some of the more delicate stuff, it takes so much concentration, which on stage is probably the hardest thing to do, because when you're running around and jumping on things and singing at the same time, it's like, how do I split my brain in half to be calm here and then keep the energy up here? But I mean, I think that's the toughest thing right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the times when I'm like working with my students and they're having that same issue of either they always sing quiet or they always sing loud, and there's kind of no in between.
Right.
I always talk to my students about how you never sacrifice tone for volume. That's just what I was taught
Mhm.
was the biggest
Mm.
thing. And they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, well, just because you're singing quiet doesn't mean that your tone has to be in a whisper. And it's like, sometimes it's such a hard thing to explain because like with singing, it's a sensation, right? It's not something that you can just like press a button and then you have the right tone and the right pitch.
Mhm.
It's like you have to feel it. And I don't know if that's a struggle you have, Nick, when you're trying to teach, is just like where you're like, yeah, you to get that tone, you just do this. And they're like, how? And you're like, I don't know, just do it. Like,
Just feel it.
I don't know. Listen, no, and especially over Zoom, because
Mhm.
you know, I feel like I'm not hearing it in the room.
Yeah.
it's so hard.
It's
Yeah.
it's very, very strange.
Well, especially
But
when that audio goes in and out where it's like, and
yes,
you're like, what?
oh, that's something I never look forward to. It's like, oh wait, are you gonna sing? And they're like, yeah, I just sang for you for the last
You're
5
like, I
minutes.
missed the whole thing.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
like,
it's happened so many
okay.
times.
Oh
I
no.
have one student, she's working on she's probably one of my students who practices like the most, and she's insane, and she's like 14 and already a better singer than I am. And I've told her that many times. I'm like, you're already better than me, but I'll help you with what I can. And she's been doing belting since even before COVID started. So like that was one of the things that helps, is like knowing what her voice sounds like in a room versus over Skype. Like I can hear certain things.
Mhm.
But when you have a new student and you're trying to teach them belting over Skype, like it's almost like, I don't want to say dangerous, but it's so much harder to try to hear their voice when all you've heard from their voice is just
Yeah,
over audio.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
My
I
next,
completely
sorry, go
agree.
ahead, Nick.
I just completely agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine being young and going through vocal lessons on Skype. I did piano actually through FaceTime like a few years back when my piano teacher moved to BC. But yeah, piano is definitely easier. I think vocal is it's just hard. So my next question for the both of you, when did you start to truly like the sound of your voice? When was that transition that you were like, I actually like what I sound like? I'm curious to know.
I'm in and out. I still don't fully love the sound, the sound of my own voice.
Me too. Me too.
So it's
It's
kind of it's always kind of constantly looming.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's like one thing that I tell my students all the time, and I tell them to try to get used to, is especially right now via Skype, I'm like, I can't sit there and listen to you, so you need to listen to yourself. Like record your practice session. Don't show anybody, it's just for you. Listen back to it, see what you can hear.
Right.
So one of the things that helped me kind of start to like my voice was to listen to it a lot. And I mean, recording an EP helps with that, just listening to my voice constantly, just the isolated vocals, which was painful.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, for me, I mean, I try to do this with everything that I listen to, even like other people when they're singing, even if they say they're not good, I'll find something that I like, which is a practice that I've had to do for myself, because I know a lot of musicians are the same way, but we're very hard on ourselves, and just being like, oh, that sounded bad. Ooh, that was pitchy. Like that's what I do constantly, even in the moment when I'm singing. I do that all the time. And then it takes me out of the moment, and then I end up not liking it. And it's just like a big cycle. So I always try to find recordings and just listen to them a lot to get used to my voice first, and then listening to it a couple times after that to be like, okay, here are some things that I like, instead of just focusing on the
negatives.
Yeah.
How about you, Nick? What do you think?
I'm in the exact same boat. I mean, it's more of a feeling thing. It's like, I know when something doesn't feel right, especially live. And then I almost dread listening back to the recording. And, you know, I think that it's definitely all in our heads, because, I mean, Marissa, you have an amazing voice. I know that. But like I'm always trying to improve because I'm never satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I definitely like my voice better than I did 5 years ago.
Right.
Like I can't listen to anything I did before like 2016. But it's definitely something that, and once you hear it on a good mic too, like definitely recording an EP, a couple singles, going into a studio, hearing yourself through a pair of amazing NS10s or something, and just like figuring out like, all right, what can I do to, you know, fix the tone? What can I do to fit the song better? What can I do to fit my voice better so that I could prolong it?
Absolutely.
You know? And it's definitely something every time I go to sing, I think about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that takes me out of the moment. It's like, I'll go to open my mouth and I'm like, wait.
Yes.
Oh, it's amazing.
I don't know. I mean, and I think that's what makes us artists. I mean, even with lyrics, I'm never satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what's interesting? I think it was on a TikTok actually when I was scrolling through. It was like, here's why you don't like the sound of your voice. I was like, what? And I watched it, and they're like, here's the scientific reason. And I don't remember all the names of the bones and the hairs and the fluid or whatever, but it had to do with the way that your ear's built. So when you hear yourself sing, the type of vibration, again, I don't remember what it's called, but the type of vibration, it happens in your bones, which are inside your head, and they pick up a lower frequency.
Yeah.
So that's the sound that you hear when you sing or when you talk, is you hear that in your head. You hear that with your bones vibrating in your ear canal area. Again, I'm not a doctor. It's just, I'm regurgitating a little bit of the information I got.
This is so interesting.
They said it was because you pick up a lower frequency. So your voice you feel your voice lower than it is. And then when you hear it back, it picks up that higher frequency. And that's what you hear because it's picking up on a different area of the ear canal.
Yeah.
Because the bones are like inside and then the hairs and stuff are kind of closer to the outside.
Up the top.
That's what they pick up. Yes, that's what they pick up. So that's why when you listen back, you're like, oh, why does my voice sound so different? Or that was like for the longest time, I thought my voice was like down here and I thought I sounded like this for the longest time. Until I listened back, I was like, my voice is a lot higher than I expected it to be. So yeah, apparently I have to look up all the names and stuff. I'm going to research this after, but
send me that TikTok, please.
Yeah, I'll have to find it. I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah. That's amazing. That totally makes sense though. Our ears are crazy structures, so it totally makes sense that that's what we would hear. That's so cool. I
mean, one thing I do say to my students is, especially with your head voice, like you definitely hear that differently than anyone else hears.
Totally.
So, but it makes sense because like we're right here talking, like it's vibrating through everything rather than just coming straight at us.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
science.
Yeah. My next question for you both, actually, do you think vocal lessons are totally needed, or do you think people can skip that step if they're able to self-teach themselves?
I think keeping your voice healthy and singing healthily is super important. And that's something that you got to study. I mean, I'm sure there's some person that knows like from birth to sing from your diaphragm and all the relaxation techniques and how to form your vowels and not to overuse your consonants. But a lot of us just it's something that you got to learn.
Absolutely. Yeah. What do you think, Marissa? Do you agree, disagree?
I was going to say I totally agree. I think that, like kind of like you said, Nick, like there's some people who have taught themselves how to sing their entire lives and they've never taken a lesson in their life. And they're still really great. They're doing good. But from what I've heard, there was a certain artist that I worked with. I'm not going to name names, but the way that they sung, I was just kind of like in the band in the background at the time. But when this artist sung, the first thing I noticed, I was like, have they taken lessons? Not because they sounded bad, but just because I could tell that it was squeezing like this.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Ouch.
oh God, I was like that. I was just like listening to
It's a
it.
recipe
Like
for
I was like, your
disaster.
songs sound great. And like, I could tell that there's something there, but I was like, oh my God, your career is going to be so short.
Mhm.
And sure enough, like 5 years later, they hit me up and they're like, yeah, they're not performing anymore just because they had some vocal issues. I was like, called it. But again, I was like, I'm just a background person. I shouldn't say anything.
Mhm.
It's like, who am I to say that? But
Right.
but again, I think that it's important, not because it's like if you take lessons, it's not because you're bad. It's because you're just working on maintaining the voice that you have. Like even artists like Adele and John Mayer have gone through that where they've had to get surgery or, isolate themselves in a cabin for 6 months and not talk to anybody.
That sounds great for other reasons too.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that it's important for having a long career, for the longevity of your voice and maintaining your voice for a long period of time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
100%. What are some things you guys are currently working on to this day with your vocal journey? What are some maybe areas that you're focusing on? I'm curious to know, like, as professionals, what are you working on now?
I mean, building my range, and because my gut instinct is to sing higher than I probably should a lot of the times. So it's making sure that I can healthily hit those notes without causing any damage, but also knowing when to not do that.
Yeah.
But between that and just, making sure that I could sing for 4 hours at a gig,
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's a hard thing, especially when you're jumping on top of bars.
Yeah.
You're
or when people want to talk to you in
also
between sets. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
That's, oh my goodness, that's another thing. It's like when you get off stage, that's when you blow your voice.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I've done probably more gigs than I've not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How about you,
I've
Marissa?
Yeah, similar things. Just like, what's the word I'm looking for? Stamina, I guess, is a hard thing to practice, and it's just a thing that you have to do when you're at gigs. But yeah, every time I come off stage, people are like, "So how are you?" And I'm like, "I'm good. I'm just gonna go not talk for a while. I'm gonna go sit backstage." And people are like, "Wow, you're rude." And I'm like, "I'm not.
Drama
I promise,
queen.
I swear." I'm like, if you want to come talk to me, come sit backstage and talk to me in a quiet room.
Yeah.
But for me personally, the biggest thing I still struggle with to this day is agility. And I'm slow with everything. I'm a slow runner. I'm a slow everything. So ballads are very easy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, agility, I'm still working on to this day. Like I still suck at agility. I could be a lot better. And then also just really, really focusing on my mixed voice specifically. Oh, Lily!
Sorry, she has to say hi.
So cute.
She wants to see what's going on. Okay, goodbye.
Lily.
Continue.
But I don't know. That's basically it. Just working on my mixed voice and kind of bringing my chest voice up into that range that it's kind of right near the crack, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing. And the last thing, kind of like working on three things. The last thing is the emotional side of music, because I find that when I let myself go and I sing with emotion, I get a completely different voice. And I love it when my voice does those things when I'm actually singing with emotion, because most of the time I'm too in it. I'm too like, what am I breathing like? What am I sounding like? Am I singing in the right spot? And then I'm just completely taken out of the moment when I'm singing a song and I don't focus on the emotion behind it anymore. And that's when I least like my performances, is when that happens. So
totally. I can 100% agree with that. And I think the chest voice too, that's an interesting part you brought up. I think it's always something it's hard. Like I think it's the hardest part of singing, is getting from head to chest to mix. I think for me, that took so long too. So I think a lot of people struggle with that.
There's nothing I fear.
I was like, well, what are you doing?
That's the best thing I think I've ever heard in my life. Do that again.
Yeah, play that again.
No, that was me imitating my terrible rendition of My Heart Will Go On when we used to stream on Twitch. It was really bad.
Yeah, this one day we were singing together. We're like, and someone requested it, so we're like, okay,
Yeah.
let's do it. And then Marissa was reaching for that high note and just
I was trying so hard.
cracked
I was
so
like ready
hard.
for it. I cracked real bad. And
I
then
could
we
not
couldn't
laugh.
finish the song because we were both laughing too hard. We're like, this is done.
It's hard to take yourself seriously after you have a big little oop like that. It's like I can't.
Oh my goodness. I completely, I'm with you on that.
Half the time I'm just like, you know what? I tell my students too, I'm just like, if your voice cracks, just let it crack. That's what it wants to do. Just let it crack. It's fine. And then just past it.
Absolutely. I have one last question for you guys before we wrap up here. What advice would you give to someone who is first starting out and is unsure of how to find their voice, or kind of they're struggling to really resonate with their voice being theirs? What advice would you give them?
I mean, with my own students, the warm-ups that I give them during the week, please do during the week. And I know because when I took lessons, I rarely ever did that. It's only when I started teaching where I was like, wow, I really got to do these every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep saying that to them too. And I'm like, hey, I messed up. I was in your shoes. Like, please listen to me.
Yeah. I know exactly how it feels.
But because it's like building any other muscle. You wouldn't go and do a triathlon without training for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you do it, all power to you. But like, and just don't. It's really easy to get frustrated, and it's really easy to try to be a perfectionist about it and try to do it perfectly the first time. But sometimes things don't come the first time.
Yeah.
So just know to, give yourself a chance, and let it grow. Let it be something that grows.
Yeah. How about you, Marissa?
I agree with that completely. My advice would be similar to what you said, Nick, was just be patient would be my biggest thing. It's just don't expect it to happen overnight. If you're working on a technique, it might take a week. It might take 4 months. You never know. And again, like I know a lot of us are into that instant gratification of like, if I'm not good at it on the first try, then I'm done with it. And it's, so that's my biggest piece of advice is if you're just starting out, be patient. Like you're not going to get it the first try. If you do, great. If not, it doesn't make you a bad singer. It doesn't mean that you're terrible. And I guess that's the second piece of my advice is just because your voice isn't responding doesn't mean you're bad. It just means your instrument needs help. It needs help. It needs work. So
absolutely. That's great. That's some great piece of advice. Thank you guys. That was our last question for the day. We are out of time. Again, we are so lucky to have had you all on today. You guys are at home watching this roundtable with Vienna Whyte on YouTube. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button because we post 2 shows daily, Monday to Friday, so there's lots of content to watch. Or if you want to hear this conversation via podcast style, just search this up on Spotify under Vienna Whyte Podcast. My name is Millie Rouge. I'm your host. And thank you, Marissa K, for being our co-host today. Marissa, I just called you Marissa. Marissa, where can we find our band on the internet?
You can search us at Vienna Whyte on Instagram. We also have a website, www.viennawhyte.com. Vienna like the city, White like White Ave with a Y, WHYTE.com.
Perfect. And Nick, can you tell us again your name and where our audience can find you?
So I'm Nick Ryan. You guys can find me on Instagram, Nick Ryan Music _ because I have got a very, very common name, or at www.nickryanpscore, that's spelled PIESCOR. That's why I don't use that name. nickryanpscore.com.
I love that. I feel that completely. I'm like, my last name's too complicated. Don't spell it. Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much. It was lovely meeting you, Nick. We'll hear from you soon. Yeah, absolutely. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
You too. Enjoy.